If you're looking to become a better hitter in MLB The Show and you need some hitting tips, then this is the right video for you. I've been playing since MLB The Show 17, so that's a bit of experience there. This year, I am 1,000 rating. I've gone flawless like 11 times already. I have a 549 batting average, and I've won tournaments. I have like 50K, and so I'm not saying that to brag, but a little bit of so you guys can trust me here. And before I start this video, I want to say that the #1 tip is to just play the game. Obviously, online from offline play is going to be very different. Timing windows are going to be different online than they are offline. They're typically going to be earlier offline, and yeah, I mean, people just pitch you way differently online, and obviously like the CPU. So that's like the main like #1 tip that you need. So just play the game and you'll get better over time. But obviously I'm gonna be doing some hitting tips here. Also, all the products that I use, like my controller, P-rings, are gonna be linked in the description below. So yeah, let's get right into the video. Comment, like, and subscribe. Let's go. Okay, so first off, we're gonna start off with equipment. First of all, do not play on a TV. You need to be on a monitor, something like this. I play on 1440. I would highly recommend to play on 1080, for starters, obviously. They're cheaper. Yeah, they're still, I would say, the same amount of response time as a 1440. The only difference being, and it's a big one, is that the ball and everything else just looks way more clear on 1440. So, if you have the extra money to spend, especially on an OLED like I have, then buy a monitor that's 1440 OLED. It's really nice, makes kind of a big difference. But for the most part, again, if you're like on a budget, I would go 1080. Still works wonders. I didn't use one until, or I've been using one until like last year, which I changed to this one. So, still really good. So yeah, don't play on a TV. Please don't do that. The timing, you're gonna be messed up. If you're on a TV and you switch to a monitor, you're gonna instantly notice the timing difference. You're gonna be way earlier, and it's just gonna be way better. Again, I would recommend either 24 or 27 inches. I wouldn't recommend 32. That's like a little bit too big, in my opinion. So yeah, for controller, I would recommend, if you're on Xbox, I would recommend a GameSir. So I'm using the GameSir Pro right now. I used to use the GameSir G7 SC for about like 2-3 years. So that one is amazing. I love that one. But this year I've been using this one and I love it. The main selling point of this is that obviously the response time is like a bit better than like a typical controller, and you will never get stick drift ever. That's like huge. You will never get stick drift because they have like Hall effect sticks, I think they're called. Never get stick drift, and the timing is pretty good and it feels good. The only thing is, I wouldn't recommend, if you have big hands, I wouldn't recommend a G7 SC because it's like pretty much like a lot smaller than this one. This one's like normal sized, I would say. This one's like more of like a stock controller size. The other one is really small. So if you have, big hands, I wouldn't recommend that. And also this one just feels more premium a little bit, and it has like mouse click buttons. And yeah, the other one just feels a bit cheaper, but it's still really good. It's still amazing. It still won me tournaments. So I mean, I'm not complaining. I'm not making any like jokes about it. But right now, this is what I use, if you wanted to know. And if we go in the settings too, I'll go over the settings as well if you use a GameSir. Okay, so my settings are on the G7 Pro here. So my dead zone is 10% on the left side. It's maxed out on the right side here, so it's at 100. I didn't move this at all. Anti-dead zone, I didn't move it at all. Stayed the same. Curve adjustment is that one. I don't know what it's called, but it's the first one. Stick trajectory, raw is good. It feels good, but a circle is better. I would say it's it just feels more natural. I don't know. But raw is not bad. If you wanted to go that route, it's not bad, but I prefer circle. And I mean, that's pretty much all that matters in the app here. If you wanted to do right trigger, like the right stick, I mean, I would go 10% as well. Just keep it the same, everything else the same. So yeah, those are the same settings too for my SC as well when I used it. If I were to recommend other controllers for Xbox, I would say the Thrustmaster is pretty good from what I've heard. Well, I used it once, but it was like way too big and sticks were way too loose. So I don't know, I wouldn't really recommend that one unless if you have like huge hands. The Power Ray isn't bad either, but I don't know. I just prefer this one way more. GameSir, you have my vote I love GameSir. If you're on PlayStation, I tried the Wolverine, the Razer Wolverine. Didn't like it. The stock controller is horrible. It's horrendous for the PlayStation, so don't use that. What I found to be the best controller by far, not even close, is the DualSense Edge, like the Elite controller for the PlayStation. It's like $200, but it's amazing. I might even prefer it more than, you know, the GameSir, but obviously I don't play on PlayStation. But when I did, I played for a year there, and yeah, it won me, you know, a lot of money in tournaments, and it's amazing. Also, another thing that I almost forgot is PlayStation versus Xbox. A lot of people always ask me like, oh, you know, is Xbox really better than PlayStation? It is. The timing on PlayStation is horrendous, especially if you've always played on Xbox and you switch to PlayStation. It is horrible. It is so bad. If you've played on PlayStation your whole life and you've always played MLB on PlayStation, you probably won't notice it. It's very hard to notice, but again, if you switch, it's night and day. On Xbox, timing, I would say if you're late on PlayStation, you'll be like good timing or perfect on Xbox. And I'm not kidding. I'm being like 100% like serious. Again, I switched from Xbox to PlayStation before, you know, when I've had to for like PS only tournaments, and it's insane the difference. So if your main game is MLB The Show and you play that more than any other game, and you're trying to be competitive and win tournaments, or, you know, just have a good record and, you know, make World Series and BR, go 10-0, Xbox is your best bet. You for sure need to get it. I would say it's worth it, 100%. So, you know, just to let you guys know, that's something that is very essential to, you know, being a good player. Also, like a few negatives are that Xbox has dread lag and a little bit worse, you know, graphics. So obviously dread lags, if you didn't know, if a player that you're using, a card, has, you know, dreads, then it will cause the game to lag, stutter, you know, cause the frames to drop. So, you know, it sucks. You know, that's why I couldn't use Ellie last year, and I couldn't use O'Neal Cruz, and I still can't use those guys, and JRAM, because, you know, they have dread lag. You know, it sucks, but it's a fair trade-off. You know, if you're on PlayStation, you don't have to worry about that. Also, like the blur feature, it causes lag on Xbox too, but it doesn't on PlayStation. So keep that in mind. Maybe that does impact your decision to stay on PlayStation or buy an Xbox. I don't know. I still feel like the timing windows and like the timing in general just, you know, alleviates that and makes Xbox just way better for me. But again, it's up to you guys. So P rings, I use purple. I don't know if you can see right here. I use purple. I only use it on my left thumbstick. I don't use it on my right thumbstick. I keep that the same. P rings just help you, you know, to prevent against slamming. Even in this year with PCI sensitivity, I still think that they're a must, like essential to becoming a good player. Control freaks as well. Let me show it again. So I used the Your Friend Kyle control freaks on the left. They're high rise. I use the high rise. I love high rise. And high rise on the right stick as well. So I've always been a high rise guy. Ever since BO3 launched, Black Ops 3, I've always been a high rise guy. And eventually I just transitioned to high rise on the left stick. I used to use low rise, or I guess mid rise, but now I'm high rise. So I just feel like I'm more precise and I have, you know, more you know, room to adjust and flexibility. So I've just liked it way more. But again, it's personal preference. Also, the Your Friend Kyle ones are amazing. Again, I used the Galaxy control freaks since like BO3, like 10 years. But I started using these this year, and yeah, I like them better than the Galaxies. They're amazing. I mean, you saw my stats in the beginning. You know, if that doesn't prove that they're good, then I don't know what does. Control freaks, they give you like way more grip, way better grip. That's why I've always loved using them, because I don't like the default thumbsticks of controllers, because they just feel too rigid and too rough, and these feel like grippy. So I love that. I love having more grip, so I have more control over the PCI. Those are the two main like accessories that you need on your controller. Again, it doesn't matter if you use high rise, mid rise on your control freak, and typically what I found is that the green and purple P rings are the best. I started using green and then I went to purple. Purple has just been my go-to for like the past 2 years. In terms of equipment, I think that is it. So let's move on to the next part. Now, before I get into the actual tips and settings, stadiums are very important. Automatically off the rip, I would say don't mess with any of the big league stadiums or any other stadium besides Coors Field. So Coors Field is by far the best stadium in the game. It's not even close. It has the highest elevation and it plays the best. So you want your good swings to be rewarded, and they won't be rewarded anywhere else or as consistently as Coors Field. So maybe a created stadium, but even then I would say no, because I've played the game for like since created stadiums were in the game, and I haven't played in a single good created stadium. So I would stay clear away from created stadiums, and I would just stick with Coors. If I had to pick like a second or a third, like best stadium, I would say either, the Tokyo Dome, but that's more for like BR. I haven't tried it on Legend yet. This stadium isn't horrible either, but again, I wouldn't really go with these stadiums. And maybe Ship It as well. Ship It, it used to be good. It used to be the meta stadium in 21, but then they nerfed it for some reason. I don't know why. Same with Shield Woods. That used to be good, but they nerfed the elevation. But yeah, Ship It, probably the second best stadium in the game, but I still would kind of stay far away from it, because it still has a lot of inconsistencies, and I would recommend Coors over it. All right, in terms of the actual settings, obviously you want to use zone. None of these other options are good. Trust me, fixed zone is new, not good. Zone is by far the best hitting interface in the game. It's always been like that since the game has been online. So, if you want to become a better player, go with zone, 100%. PCI sensitivity is a new feature in the game, and it's really good. I like it a lot. So if you're on All-Star, I would go All-Star or below. I would go with medium here. So, your PCI is like a little bit like stiff, it's like medium. It's not the worst thing in the world in All-Star and below. Once you get to Hall of Fame and Legend, I would go either like a little bit higher setting or maxed out, which is what I use. And I think that's default. The reason for this is on Legend specifically, and Hall of Fame too, but Legend more so, pitches are coming in really fast, like really, really fast. So you want to move your PCI as quick as possible, but also as precisely as possible. I just feel like it's way better, especially if you use P-rings and control freaks like I told you. This is the absolute best way to use the sensitivity. You're just gonna get to things quicker, and it's just gonna feel more natural. I would still use this for All-Star, like max sense, but the middle is not bad at all, especially if you're finding yourself to be slamming a bit and you're like just in a slump. Maybe lower it down, but this is what I've used for like everything, and it's worked out perfectly. Obviously have this on. You need this. You need the PCI. It's essential. And in terms of the actual PCI, I would recommend diamonds. This is what I've always used. It's what made me a good player, and I've always used this. I just feel like I'm more precise. I don't know, it's just what I've always used, and it's great. I love it. I've always used yellow too. I just feel like it's the best. It's preference. This is all preference. Like the PCI center inner is all preference. I know some people use, for the inner, they just use basic with no middle or center, or they use outer with nothing or outer with center. But again, I just stick to this. Even if I'm struggling, I always stick to this. For the opacity, I always max it out. Some people don't like seeing their PCI, and that's fine. I get it. But I always like seeing mine. So it's what I use. It's also preference. But yeah, anchor is not bad, but I don't find the need for it. I feel like it's better to just keep your PCI in the middle and just react to everything else. But again, preference, personal preference. Swing input, buttons, you don't want to use analog stride, analog flick, none of that. Buttons is the fastest way. You can even remap your button to like a back paddle if you have a pro controller, or like LRB. I know a lot of people do that. I don't do that. I just stick with A, and yeah, it's worked out for me. So that's what I've always used. In terms of cameras, I always use Tri-Zone. I think it's the best. I know people use Tri-Zone High. Tri-Zone High, but I've always stick to Tri-Zone. I feel like it's the best. But again, if you're picking one or the other, you can, or the two best ones are Strike Zone High and Strike Zone. So I know Frosty uses Strike Zone High, Costa uses Strike Zone High. I think Cafe Los BR uses Strike Zone High. I'm not sure. I think so. But I've always used this. I feel like it's the best. So, yeah. The in-play view dynamic is probably the best. I just like seeing the ball travel like when I hit it. So it's probably honestly not the best for like actual like seeing if the ball is getting down or not. But in terms of like visually appealing to the eye, I go dynamic. It's just what I've always liked. Again, with the blur, this is an amazing feature. The only bad thing, like I said earlier, is that it lags. It causes a little bit of lag and like stuttering and like frame drops if you're on Xbox. If you're on PlayStation, have this on 100%. Doesn't matter. You're gonna get no lag. If you're on Xbox, I would recommend starting with it on. Just turn this on in the settings. And if you find a little bit of lag or just, you know, lag in general, just turn it off for the rest of the game. But yeah, I just have this off normally because it's just whatever. I'm not gonna deal with the lag, but if I were to recommend it to someone, I would keep it on and then just turn it off if you feel the lag. Oh, vibration. Vibration is a huge thing too that I've learned over the years. So you need to have vibration off. That is something that I would turn off immediately. It's gonna feel weird at first, but trust me, it's worth it. Especially if you have like runners on, like your hitter is gonna be like, your controller is gonna be shaking. Like it's gonna throw you off. It is going to make the PCI move as well when it's shaking. And also when you swing, it's gonna move it a little bit, like the PCI is gonna move. So have this setting off. I promise you it's gonna make a game changer. It's at least not gonna throw you off when you have runners on. So very important, turn that off. Okay, so let's get into custom practice here. So this is a very huge like feature that you need to get into. I personally don't use it that much. I only use it like during or like before a tournament, like if I need to warm up and like practice a certain pitch that I'm having like trouble with, then I use it. Yeah, I find it to be very helpful for that sort of thing. But I don't warm up or do anything before I play ranked. But you know, most people, this is something that they will use to you know, get ready for ranked or just to like, again, just practice, which is very huge in this game. What I would do is I would turn on every pitch, right? Every pitch on here. And I would set it to only strikes. Okay, so at least when you're actually hitting. Before actually like swinging the bat, I would turn this off and just track with your PCI, right? So I would go in here, I would just sit here and not swing. Like for 5 to 10 minutes, I would say, I would just sit here, boom, just track, right? Just track for 5-10 minutes. That'll get you warmed up for a little bit. And then once you're actually ready to like swing the bat, I would say just give it like 5 minutes, honestly, don't even do 10. But when you're actually ready to swing the bat, then, you know, turn it on. Put all of these here, turn them all on. Only strikes. It'll help you just hit the ball. You'll get practice with that way. And again, if you're having trouble with any type of pitch, you know, turn it all the way up and turn everything, you know, off. If you can't hit the slider, if you cannot hit the fastball, you know, turn it all the way up, and you know, vice versa. So you know, just a very huge and like integral part of becoming a good player. I know I used to use it when I was like kind of like starting to play Legend and I was starting to like trying to become a good player. 100% recommend. You need this if you're trying to be better. Okay, now for the actual tips. So the very first thing I would say, again, something that people ask me so much in my streams. They ask me, where do you set your sights on? Where do you look at the pitcher? The answer is I look at the hat area, right? So I look like right there. Sometimes even the hat. It's probably just the head area, but yeah, it's the head area for sure. So I would recommend this because if you look at the glove or like the hand as well, or the arm, which a lot of people do, you know, it just throws you off, at least for me, especially for a pitcher that has like a ton of movement like going on, right? Like, you know, they're like moving their hands a lot, or they're like just have a weird motion. It just causes me to be, you know, cross-eyed sometimes, or like to lose sight of the ball. So what I've found is that, you know, if you just keep your sights right there, somewhere around there, it's just better. You'll see the ball way better. And for the most part, you're not gonna get cross-eyed. The only exception to that is, you know, when you have a submarine pitcher on the mound, like O'Day or Tyler Rogers, then I would stay like somewhere like in the middle here, so that, you know, you don't get thrown off and cross-eyed, because, you know, they're pretty tough and you can get cross-eyed pretty often if you're facing them. So, you know, that's what I would do if you're trying to set your sights on and pick up the ball. You also want to figure out like what type of hitter you are. So there are two type of hitters from what I've seen and played. So there's hitters that are like, I guess, flick hitters that start their PCI like in the middle. and they don't move it until the pitch comes. So it's like right there, they start it middle, don't do nothing, no pitch, no pre-pitch routine, and then pitch comes and boom, right, they move it. And then there's other hitters that I would, something that I would recommend that I do is, you do like a pre-pitch motion, or you move your PCI like this, and then when the pitch comes, you swing. That's what I've always done. I feel like flicking your PCI just feels unnatural, and it's probably going to cause you to overshoot and slam way more often than if you're like doing a pre-pitch routine, or if you're moving your PCI like before the pitch. Again, I used to like do all this type of like crazy movements and all that. I used to like start up here and then go down and then like, go to the ball. I would just recommend keeping it simple. Again, I just simplified everything, and I've just transitioned to just, putting it right here, just leaving it there, moving it like right around here, and then as soon as the pitch comes, I swing right there. So I would recommend that. I would also recommend finding like where your PCI stops, like right before the pitch. So as I just said, I used to, do a crazy routine. I would do this and then start up here. But I noticed that every single time, as soon as the pitch was about to be thrown or like released, I would like move it down here like fast, and then I would move it up to the pitch. So I don't know why I do that. I really don't know, but I bet there's a lot of people that, do something similar. So, record yourself and, see like in the gameplay where you last placed your PCI. For me, it was right here, so I just simplified everything and just like keep it around here somewhere. But maybe for you, it's like up here, like, or like somewhere like on the edge here or down here. So yeah, record yourself and see where you finish it last there, and try to simplify it. Maybe remove like all the extra stuff and just start with it there or there or there or there. So it's something I would recommend that probably will help you a lot. A huge thing for me that I do that I feel like helps me out a lot, especially when I'm struggling, is that I like to focus on pitches. I would say this is more of like a pitch speed and like pitch shapes type of thing. So, for example, Andres Munoz, he has a outlier fastball, right? He has a sinker, a changeup, and a slider. What I do is that I either eliminate the four-seamer, which is outlier, or I eliminate, the slider, sinker, and changeup. So I sit on either fastball or those three pitches, and the odds, right? A sinker, slider, and changeup are 3-1, right? Fastball being 1. Typically, the sinker, slider, and changeup are going to be like way slower than the fastball, but there's the sinker's still a bit fast, so you still at least have time to react to it. What I do is, if I'm sitting four-seamer, obviously I'm going to be on that 100% of the time. If I'm sitting sinker, slider, changeup, their pitch speeds are kind of the same. So and even if the sinker is a bit faster, you'll just kind of foul it off. But I'd rather take my chances against those three pitches than a four-seamer, which it's only one pitch. So that's something that helps me out a lot when I'm hitting. Instead of just sitting on one pitch, which a lot of people do, I just sit on either, again, the pitch speeds of three pitches or the pitch speed of one. And also, don't try to react to like everything. Having an approach is like huge. Like, you don't want to just be sitting here just looking for the pitch and just reacting off of it. You got to be hunting pitches all the time. So my approach is I always sit, fast pitches inside, specifically high and in, and then I just react to something that just falls, like an off-speed pitch or a cutter away. Typically, off-speed is going to be low, and fast pitch is going to be like high or like inside, sometimes high and away. So yeah, and honestly, like the only exception to what I said earlier with like the pitch speeds and shapes of sitting on pitches is when a pitcher has a cutter. So a cutter could be a huge outlier. So someone like Felix, Doval, Roy Halladay, those guys will have way faster cutters than someone than other pitchers. So if you want, you can do what I told you to in the beginning and just sit on like the three pitches of sinker, slider, changeup, and then throw away the fastball. But if a pitcher has a fast cutter and a fast sinker and a fast, outlier fastball, then sit on those 3 pitches and then just react to everything else. That is probably gonna be like the only outlier when it comes to what I told you. So for sure, do one of those 2 options. Again, it really depends on the pitcher. So yeah, for the most part too, I would never sit on off speed like fully. I would only do that if a pitcher has like only a fastball, like a 4-seam fastball, and no sinker and no cutter. That's the only time where I feel like it's like acceptable to even sit on off speed only. Just don't sit on off speed. Only do it if it's, like I said, fastball only. Don't be afraid to be patient. Like in the past, I used to watch videos that told me to take until a strike or take until 2 strikes. I used to do that a lot when I was still trying to become good at the game, and it did help a lot because when you're taking a pitch, you're like tracking it, and you're again looking at how the pitcher throws and what the pitch speeds are. So I mean, I would highly recommend that if you're having trouble chasing pitches or swinging at pitches in the dirt or like up in the zone. But for sure, like if you're taking pitches, don't just sit there and like this. Don't just sit there and take all the way. Like sit there and actually like track the ball. Like how I said in the custom practice, like you're like tracking the ball. I would do that if you're taking. Don't just track it. Don't sit there and just do nothing. Just whatever you do, don't place your controller down and just take it all the way. I would always be tracking. For my approach as well is that I'm always on swing mode, right? I'm always chasing my pitch. My pitch is always up and in, or fastball, sinker, inside. For the most part, again, I'm always sitting hard stuff. I'm never looking for a walk. Even if I'm 3-0, I'm never looking for a walk. Never. I am like cautiously like looking out for pitches, right? So if it's like a way in like the corner or like way up here in the corner, I am never, for the most, I mean, so there's sometimes that I will swing, but I'm always like looking to take that. But my mentality is still like swinging. Like I'm still in swing mode. But again, if it's a pitch I don't like or I'm not looking for, I'm not gonna swing. Don't be afraid of check swing too. Check swing is huge, at least for me. I always tend to check swing on like almost every pitch because of like I just said, I'm always looking to swing. I'm always in swing mode. And what the like even in like the big leagues, like in real life, like like when someone is like actively trying to like swing and they're in swing mode, they check swing. So I feel like that's huge. If you can master the check swing, I feel like you'll be like probably like 2 or 3 times better than what you are. Also know how people pitch you online. Like there is a lot of people that fall into patterns. Like honestly, everybody will fall into a pattern. I promise you. Like say like you're sitting on a fastball up and you crush it, you perfect it, right? If your opponent sees that, they're not gonna go there that often anymore. And you can, maybe even eliminate that pitch. Maybe even if you're facing like a smart pitcher, they'll go back to it. But again, they're not gonna, throw it too much anymore. So, always be cautious of how people pitch you online. They're gonna fall into patterns. You always need to be prepared for how people are gonna pitch you. Even if like a pitcher is bugged, like you gotta be on top of that. You gotta know, like honestly, Hater is bugged. His 2-seamer causes warping. And it causes your swings, every swings, to be a contact swing. So always be aware of those things. Again, like the Hater thing I just said. Always keep that in mind. Another very important thing too is that you always have to know like the swings of your cards and the tendencies of your cards that you're using. So how's that a ball, by the way? So when you're using a card, you have to know if they're either an extreme pull hitter, or if they're a pull hitter, or balanced, or a push hitter, or an extreme push hitter. So an extreme pull hitter like Mookie Betts, anything inside you're gonna be early. You're gonna crush it. They tend to have the best swings in the game. That's why Mookie is like my #1 righty in the game right now. And the only bad part about them kinda is that they're susceptible to slider shrinkage more often, or like pitches away, you know, you'll maybe be good timing on the ball and you'll pull it for a fly ball and it's gonna die. So that's like the only like bad thing, but it's not guaranteed every time. You know, I'd say it's like 2% or 1% of the time that it happens, but you got to be mindful of these things. Someone like a bounce hitter is still really good. I think Acuna is a bounce hitter, so I mean, still really good. But you got to be wary of guys like, you know, push hitter tendencies. You got to know like Piazza. Piazza has a push hitter tendency. He has like a huge hole in his swing, like inside. You have to be way earlier than other hitters. So, you know, you got to know things like this. A good player will know this. And, you know, if you know that, they'll know that you're sitting inside with Piazza and they're going to throw you away and you're going to be early. Like, it's going to throw you off. So, you know, be super mindful of these things. They're huge. You know, people tend to overlook that. But, you know, it's a big aspect of the game. And, you know, even someone like Aaron Judge too, or like Altuve, or you know, JRAM, that's gonna play a big factor too, like the height of a player. So like Altuve and JRAM, like people are gonna pitch you higher, and like with 2 strikes they're gonna pitch you up, like fastballs up, because they look like strikes. So, you know, they're gonna get you to chase a lot with that. And pitches low too, like with a short hitter, they look good. So, you know, be careful. You know, if you're not very good with that, then don't really pick a short player. You know, a really tall player like Aaron Judge too, it's gonna be tough. You know, he's gonna struggle with the very high pitches. Not so much the low pitches. Those are pretty easy to see with someone like Judge, like a tall player. But, you know, a smart player against a tall player will, you know, be smart, and they'll throw you up here, you know, pitches up and in. You know, there's really tough to hit with those kind of players. But what I found is that the most tough pitch to hit with, you know, someone like Judge is a fastball up and away. For some reason, it's super difficult to hit. The timing is way like faster as opposed to something inside for some reason. So, you know, if you're using a top player, I would honestly sit on. I would be wary of this pitch too, but I would sit like away, like up and away, especially fastball. So, you know, keep that in mind when you're using these types of players. Really important things to notice. So, for sure. Another thing too that I would say is my approach versus righties and lefties. So versus a righty, if it's like righty, I'm sitting sinker or fastball up and in here, and I'm just reacting to everything else. I don't know, I just a lot of people prefer righty. There's some people that like lefty. I don't know, that's kind of insane, but for the most part, I just feel like it's pretty easy to, you know, react to anything inside. For the most part, you know, same swing timings are going to be on an inside pitch, and anything inside is either going to be a fastball or, you know, a sinker, or sometimes a cutter up and in. Anything low and away, you know, it's going to be pretty easy to hit. You know, you're going to be, you know, you have all day to sit back basically. But, you know, if you sit on something inside here, you'll probably be on something up and away because you're just going to be early. So yeah. Lefty is a little bit more interesting because I feel like you have to sit on a pitch, kind of lefty. So lefty, I just sit on sinker or, you know, away. So it's going to be one or the other every single time. For the most part, I would just sit inside because, you know, you're going to get a sinker at some point in the AB. No one in the world is going to throw like 4 cutters in a row, or 5 in a row, or 4 sliders away in a row. It's very rare for that to happen. They're gonna go inside at least once. So I'd be sitting on sinker all the time. If you have like a hard read, then yeah, you know, if all they're doing is just throwing cutters away, and like that's like their main pitch they're throwing, then yeah, sit cutter, and you know, just don't swing at sinkers in. But specifically lefty, not even like righty. Lefty, a sinker inside is impossible to hit if you're not sitting on it. If you're sitting slider or a cutter away with like righty, you can sometimes like get away with it and like, you know, foul a pitch off if it's an inside pitch. But an inside pitch on a lefty situation, like specifically a sinker, you have no chance, 0 chance of hitting it if you're not sitting on it. So yeah, for the most part, I would just sit on that. all the time if you're lefty. I feel like that's the best way to hit there. Using a switch hitter doesn't really matter. I mean, you're gonna hit everything. It doesn't really matter at all. Just be cautious of like pitches running in. You know, they're gonna throw you inside cutters a lot. Maybe get you to roll over away, or get you to roll over, you know, on an inside pitch, low and in. So yeah, I mean that's basically it for approach. You know, lefty, righty, switch hitter. Yeah, I've seen lots of clips on Twitter, and you know, I've noticed it a little bit too. Like shrinking is still kind of in the game, and I don't know if it's because of the vision attribute, which is like a huge thing too. But sometimes, like, I don't know, maybe even take a slider away, or take a slurve or a sweeper, you know, maybe even take those pitches and just like, you know, try to not swing at them, because sometimes they can be, you know, they can get you to pop up if you're all over the ball, or they can get you to you know, sometimes even completely whiff on the pitch if you're all over it. If you're on lower difficulties like Hall of Fame and All-Star, this doesn't really matter. You're always gonna be, your PCI is always gonna be big. This vision does not matter in those levels. But again, if you're on Legend and you're trying to get a Legend and you eventually get there, be wary of these things, because it is very important. And yeah, I would be very careful of that. There is two types of swings in this game. There's a two-handed swing and a one-handed swing. Typically, like 95% of the time, two-handed swings are going to have a faster swing, and you will get so many more check swings with a two-handed swing than a one-handed swing. You know, again, Mookie, I think, has the best swing in the game. He's a two-handed swing guy. Tatis has a two-handed swing. Singleton has a two-handed swing. Will Smith has a two-handed swing. Ketel has a two-handed swing, right? So all of these guys have two-handed swings, and I would say it's a huge part of the game. Again, you will get check swings way more often. Like, I would say 98% of the time if you have a two-handed swing. Again, there are some exceptions. You know, there are some really like amazing like one-handed swings, but there's very few, I would say. For the most part, I would say Santana, Willie Castro has a decent one-handed swing. Alex Bregman is like amazing. You know, probably like top 3 swing in the game. JD Davis, I don't know if he's still in the game, but you know, he had an amazing one-handed swing. You know, guys like that, they're very like rare exceptions, but for the most part, I would again recommend use a two-handed swing. This is huge, man. Like, I don't, this goes unchecked by a lot of people, but especially if you're trying to get like check swings like consistently, go with a two-handed swing. I don't know how many times I said that word in this part of the video, but it's very important in my opinion. With that being said, that is the hitting tips video. You know, I hope you guys liked this video. You know, it was kind of long from, you know, from what I see that I recorded here, but again, let me know if you guys enjoyed it, if you guys liked it, if you guys found it helpful, and if you have some issues or like some questions or concerns, or you know, you want me to answer a certain question that I maybe forgot to answer or didn't answer in this video, I'll try to answer to every single comment that's on this video. Leave a like, comment, subscribe, goes a long way. Trying to grow the channel here. So yeah, hope you guys have a great day. I'll see you guys in the next one.